The movie starts in a village called Green Valley, with two girls named Furiosa and Valkyrie. Furiosa was picking an apple from a tree, and she and her sister were having a great time. But suddenly, Furiosa heard the sound of a gang nearby, and she got worried and told Valkyrie to hide. Furiosa sneaked off and tried to sabotage the gang's motorcycles to stop them from escaping, but one of the gang members spotted her. So Furiosa stabbed him with the knife and ran away and started whistling to let her mom Mary know she was in trouble. Mary sensed something was wrong and got moving with the villagers. Meanwhile, the gang members were chasing Furiosa and managed to catch her, and they took her on a motorcycle and drove off. Mary and the villagers arrived late, and Mary and her friend Vivian followed behind them. Vivian manages to shoot one of them. Then Mary comes in and finishes him off with a knife, taking his motorcycle. Mary orders Vivian and tells her to stick around, Vivian giving her some ammo for her gun and wishing her good luck in bringing her daughter back alive. Mary goes and knocks down another gang member, so now there are just two left, one of whom is carrying Furiosa. The gang stops to see who's coming up behind them, and Furiosa takes advantage and tries to cut the fuel hose with her mouth. After that, the gang takes off again. Furiosa has successfully cut the fuel hose, and at night, the motorcycle breaks down because of a fuel leak. Gang members are scared that whoever's chasing them will kill them. They're debating whether to leave Furiosa behind or not. While they're talking, Furiosa runs away from them. But in the end, they manage to catch her and make it to their village. Mary is still behind them, watching them enter the village, and from a distance, she manages to take out another gang member. The only one left holding Furiosa is a guy named Tao, who heads back to his village. And he meets the deputy to the village chief, Norton, who starts questioning Tao about Furiosa. And he was asking him, "Where did you get her from?" Norton was really surprised by Furiosa because girls who look and are healthy like that are rare these days. Tao told him, "I got her from a resource-rich village, and I won't tell anyone about the village except for our leader, Dementus, because all the credit goes to me." Norton agreed and listened to him, and went to meet leader Dementus. But Furiosa jumped in and disabled his motorcycle, broke down, and he got seriously injured. So Norton took Furiosa and brought her to Dementus, explaining that this girl is from a resource-rich village, and Dementus guys checked on Furiosa. And she was in pretty good shape. Dementus orders to bring Tao, who has captured Furiosa, but Tao was dying and couldn't talk to tell them where Furiosa village was. The guys from the Dementus flipped Tao over and ordered him drawing a map of the village, but Furiosa intervenes and hits him quickly and he dies. Dementus spoke to Furiosa calmly, telling her to relax and that he'd get her back to her village tomorrow, but his real plan was to use Furiosa to find out where her village was, attack it, and take its resources. Meanwhile, two of his men took Furiosa to the tent to take care of her and keep an eye on her. At the same time, Mari was disguised in the clothes of a gang member. Then she sneaked into the village to free Furiosa. She started killing the men outside the tent, then went inside and finished off everyone there. Only one woman was left, looking all helpless and begging for mercy from Mary. Mary left the woman and ran away with her daughter, but the poor woman went and alerted the gang about what happened. The gang started shooting at Mary's gas tank, and her clothes caught fire, so she decided to get rid of it and move on. After a while, she stopped and heard the gang coming on motorcycles. Luck wasn't on Mary's side because she was injured in the back from the fire, but she didn't give up and kept on escaping. Even though the storm hidden the tracks of Mari's motorcycle, but the gang has dogs that can sniff out the blood from Mari, so they know exactly how she's moving. Mary decided to sacrifice herself for her daughter's sake, letting Furiosa go off on her own to the Green Valley village. She tells her, "I'm gonna fight the gang and buy you some time to escape." Furiosa was hesitant at first, but Mary convinced her. Furiosa listens, and Mary gives her some seeds, asking her to plant them in the village when she gets back. Furiosa moves by motorcycle. Mary engages Dementus's men and manages to take out a bunch of them, but in the end, they catch her. Furiosa saw what happened from afar, and starts thinking about going back to save her, and finds her mom hanging from a tree being tortured, and she wanted to free her, but Dementus grabs her and asked her to tell him where her village is, or he will let her mother die. But Furiosa refuses and doesn't say anything. so Dementus makes her watch her mom die right in front of her. The next day, Dementus and his crew head out to the desert, and one of his guys tries to escape from the gang, but after catching him, Dementus decides to punish him. He ties him to 5 motorcycles and ordered 20 gang members fight to the death. The last 5 left will ride the motorcycles to tear the guy who tried to escape apart, while Dementus's men start fighting like animals. Furiosa sees what's going on while she's locked up in a cage, thinking that Dementus and his crew are crazy and that tough times are ahead. The next day, Dementus heads out to find food and water, while Furiosa is stuck in the cage with an old man called the Historian. The Historian offers to teach Furiosa how to write, but she turns him down. However, at night, we find out that Furiosa has been secretly teaching herself to write and drawing stars on her hands to remember the way back to her village in the Green Valley. Later on, Dementus and his crew come across a strange injured man on the road who thinks he's in heaven, and Dementus is really taken aback by that. Dementus looks at him and says, "Where are you from?" The guy replies, "I'm from a place called Citadel City, and it's run by a guy named Joe. Joe has this crazy hold over his people. This strange dude thinks he died fighting for Joe, so now he believes he's in heaven." Dementus gets that this guy has some weird beliefs, and from what he says, it sounds like Citadel City has food and drinks. Dementus manages to convince him to take them to Citadel City. After a bit, Dementus and his crew arrive at Citadel City with plans to take over the whole place. He starts talking to the people saying, "I'm gonna take down that tyrant Joe. Just work with me, and you'll be set." This city used to live in poverty and hunger, but despite that, they were calm and no one responded to Dementus. Joe's assistant was telling Dementus to pick one of them, and Joe would make that person commit suicide, which they did without any objections. Dementus realized that Joe's men were ready to sacrifice their lives for him. Joe's assistant told Dementus, "You're stupid, you and your guys, for coming here and challenging us and Endelis. As for the sons of Joe, Rictus and Corpus, they say to Dementus, you and your men will die." After that, Joe ordered his men to attack Dementus, and a devastating battle broke out between the two sides, resulting in many of Dementus's men dying. During this chaos, Joe's men arrest Furiosa, but Dementus intervenes and is able to bring her back and escape with her. The Dementus guys were watching a truck full of food and drinks leaving Citadel City, heading to a place called Gas City. The plan was to deliver the food and drinks to Gas City in exchange for some gas. We find out that Gas City, Ammo City, and Citadel City are all under the control of Joe. After spotting the truck, Dementus realizes it's their golden opportunity. The next morning, they hijack the truck as it's leaving Gas City and successfully took control of the city. Dementus captures the leader of Gas City and sends him one of the leader's fingers along with a message. In the message, he offers to negotiate and talk, and Joe agrees. Dementus shows up with the boss of Gas City, and Dementus is pitching to Joe that they should strike a deal together. He tells him to consider him the new boss of Gas City, and if he hands over the food and drinks, he'll supply the gas just like the old boss used to do. But if Joe not down for that, he threatens to blow up Gas City because he's planted bombs all over the place. And if he doesn't come back to the city, his guys will blow it up, and then there won't be any gas left at all. Joe agrees to the deal because he needs the gas, but Joe hits back saying he wants a Furiosa, and that he will raise her until she grows up, and then he will marry her to have a healthy kid. Because my previous wives couldn't give a healthy boy, and Dementus was upset about that because he loved Furiosa. But in the end, he agreed and prioritized the Gas City's ruling over Furiosa. After that, his guys took Furiosa and put her with Joe's wives. Even though Joe's wives are healthy, none of them could have a healthy boy. Furiosa didn't want to stay in that place or be Joe's wife, so she started cutting her hair because she noticed Rictus liked it. She made a wig from her hair and wore it, thinking of a way to escape. Later that night, Rictus kidnapped Furiosa from her bed, and he wanted to force himself on her, but he saw stars drawn on her hands. But Furiosa managed to pull her hands away and ran off, and she hid from him. Rictus was holding her hair and searching for her madly. His brother Corpus came over and asked him what was up. Rictus didn't want anyone to know he was trying to get with Furiosa because that could get him killed, so he didn't mention it to anyone. Not even after she escaped. Furiosa had actually been hiding under them. Years went by, and Furiosa was working in the city, disguised as a boy. Living with guys, pretending to be tough and not talking, and so far, no one had figured her out. The Joe's guys found this car and were trying to tow it, but it was about to fall. And there's a guy who was about to die, but Furiosa jumped in bravely and managed to save him. Corpus respects Furiosa for what she did. Rictus was close to figuring out Furiosa, but luckily, Corpus stepped in and distracted him. Joe was eager to build a huge, fast truck to transport food and drinks and make a getaway. Once the truck was ready, Furiosa found out that a guy named Jack would be driving it. Furiosa realized this is her chance for the escape, and she was stashing some gear under the truck. After that, Jack drove the truck and left City of Citadel while Furiosa hid underneath, but suddenly, a bunch of road pirates showed up and surrounded the truck to take what was inside, and Furiosa saw that the truck had taken some serious damage. They were under attack, and the bandits were placing bombs under the truck. Furiosa was busy fixing the damage, moving those bombs away, and taking out anyone who got too close. But the number of bandits kept increasing, and they had parachutes flying around and dropping bombs on the truck. They were gaining control of the battle. Jack was doing his best to take out as many as he could, while Furiosa fixing the truck. Then she revealed herself and started fighting the bandits, shooting them down. That's when Jack realized that Furiosa had snuck onto the truck and she was fighting on his side. Furiosa saved Jack from one guy who was about to kill him and skillfully took out several others. One of those who were flying high ended up completely wiped out, and everyone in the truck died except for her and Jack. After Furiosa took down the bandits, she had the guts to point a gun at Jack, wanting to take charge, but Jack suddenly stopped, and she lost her balance, so Jack threw her out of the vehicle and drove off, leaving Furiosa alone in the desert. But a few minutes later, Jack came back to her and said, "Even if I gave you the truck and filled it up, there's nowhere for you to escape, because all the places around us are either owned by the Joe or the Dementus." Furiosa aimed her weapon at him, and Jack was really impressed by her bravery, especially since he lost a lot of men in the fight with the bandits. But Furiosa managed to save the day, and he offered a deal. He says to her, "I want you to work with me as my assistant, and in return, I'll teach you everything about driving on roads like this and how to stay alive as much as possible. This way, you might end up with all the skills you need to escape." Furiosa agrees and puts down her weapon. From then on, Jack and Furiosa become a team and tackle all the missions together. One day, they take the truck to the ammo city, and we find out that the people there are working like slaves to produce as much ammo as possible. Jack supplies them with food and drink in exchange for the bombs, and the town's leader is talking to Jack, telling him that Dementus is really insane, and because of his craziness, the town is falling apart. In the end, Dementus is the one to blame for all this. "I want you to ask Joe. I want to talk to him about it." He gives Jack the gun he asked for. But Jack isn't interested in about what he says and just walks away. Jack hands the gun to Furiosa so she can defend herself when she escapes. A few days later, Jack and Furiosa went to the gas city to trade food and drink for gas, and now the place is in chaos because of Dementus's poor management. Dementus tells Jack that the mess going on is all because of Joe. So this guy Dementus is totally refusing to take any blame for himself and is complaining about the food and drinks they're getting. He tells Jack that you guys are serving the worst food and drinks, and it's just not enough for us. I want to have a meeting with Joe and all the judges to talk about this. Jack didn't argue with him and agreed. Meanwhile, we see the desperate townsfolk attacking the truck because they want the food. In all the chaos, they actually manage to grab some food and drinks, but Jack can't get the gas and has to hurry away. He goes back to Joe and tells him about the mess in Gas City, and Joe's sons are losing it, demanding they raid Gas City and kill Dementus and Joe. He agrees to the plan. Joe orders Jack and Furiosa to go to Ammo City to find whatever ammo they can get for the fight against Dementus. Furiosa is finally looking to get revenge on Dementus. Jack asks her about this drawing, she explaining that it shows the star alignment for the area where she was born, and then shares her whole story. Jack sympathized with her and tells her he'll take her back to her village. Furiosa and Jack are in love. The next day, they're both heading to the ammo city, but they stopped halfway and Jack orders that all the motorcycles to be loaded onto the truck, and Furiosa will drive one of the cars. And Jack ordered one of Joe's men to ride with him in the car. Furiosa pretended to be surprised by this change, but it was a plan they had agreed on to escape. They arrived at Ammo City. The city looked like it was deserted, but it turns out that Dementus had set an ambush for them there and took over the city. Jack figured it out and warns Furiosa. Jack and Furiosa were fighting with a lot of Dementus guys, and they were able to kill a large number of Dementus's men. But suddenly, a new group of Dementus's men showed up to help him out. Dementus himself appeared to help his men. Furiosa could have escaped, but she decided to go back to help Jack and get revenge on Dementus. She tried to kill him but failed, and Dementus shot back with a rocket. Luckily, Furiosa didn't die, she just fell underground. Jack blew up the spot where Dementus was standing, and Dementus was about to die, but he got saved at the last second. Jack got stuck in a big hole and was about to fall in, but Furiosa showed up just in time and saved him. They jumped in a car and took off while their whole team got wiped out. But Dementus was chasing after Jack and Furiosa with a large group of his men, taking shortcuts and climbing hills to catch up with them. He flipped their car and captured both of them. Dementus was really pissed because they had killed a lot of his men, and his plan was to lead an army and take over Citadel City. Now Jack and Furiosa are in trouble, as Dementus was going to make them pay. He tied up Furiosa so she couldn't escape, while his guys tortured Jack, dragging him behind them on a motorcycle. Dementus had Furiosa watch Jack getting tortured while the dogs were gnawing at his body, and the gang were torturing him until he died. Then Dementus looked over at Furiosa and saw that she had cut off her hands and escaped. We see Furiosa riding a motorcycle and escape from them. Dementus and his crew were getting ready to chase her down. But Dementus found out that Furiosa had wrecked his car and messed up the tire. Dementus's guys were chasing after Furiosa, but she managed to slip away from them. After a long while, she ran out of gas and ended up walking until she passed out. Then, she woke up in a cave beneath Citadel City, and when she came to, she saw an old woman and some dead bodies. Furiosa gets scared of her and runs away, she going back to Joe, telling him what happened to her and her fight with the Dementus. They will come at us and want to take over the city of Citadel. Joe gets angry and goes to his men to get them ready to face Dementus, telling them the plan is to trick Dementus into thinking we're heading to the gas city. Furiosa asks Joe to be her the one to kill Dementus. Then, Dementus sees them heading to the gas city, so he and his men go to the city of Citadel, believing it to be unprotected. But, of course, that was a trap set by Joe. He only sent a few cars, and those cars quickly turn around and head back to Citadel City. A battle breaks out between the two sides, and goes on. For days, Furiosa had been using that time to craft a metal hand for herself to replace the one she lost. We all know the war was on, and Joe's army was winning, while Dementus was on the run because he was losing. Furiosa cut her hair and took the car that was missing a tire and drove it to the battlefield. There, she met Joe's guys who needed tires for their car to chase off the Dementus. She offered to give them the 3 tires she had along with the gas in the car. They put the tires on their vehicle and got it ready to roll, but Corpus and Rictus were still arguing about who was going to drive the car. They were distracted while Furiosa was stealing the car. Furiosa set out alone because she wanted to take out Dementus. She managed to kill a group of men, and Dementus divided his men into 3 different squads to confuse Furiosa and make her not know who to chase. Furiosa was behind that group, thinking that Dementus is with them, but she realizes that she is wrong, and after killing them, she was able to find Dementus. He kept running and he was alone. She was slowly following him in the car to tire him out from running, making him feel like he had a chance, even though he really didn't. In the end, Dementus got exhausted and fell to the ground, surrendering. And she got out of the car, revealing herself and asking him, "Do you remember me?" But he didn't recognize her. He tried to stab her in the legs, but she quickly punched him in the face. He blacked out, and when Dementus came to, Furiosa had tied him up with a rope. She was reminding him of what he did to her 15 years ago when he killed her mom right in front of her. He was telling her, "I don't remember you, and I don't remember that memory." She confronted him, Furiosa wanting him to remember, and Dementus still didn't remember, while she said, "You ruined my childhood," raising a weapon at him as he told her, "If you kill me, I'll die and won't feel a thing, so that's pretty weak torture." She replied, "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I get my revenge on you." He laughed at her words, saying, "I'll be dead and you'll be alive, stuck with the memory that haunts you. Killing me won't change anything for you. It'll just free me while you stay here struggling with your memories." Furiosa gets angry and hits him hard. In the end, Dementus remembers Furiosa, the little girl who was with him, and tells her he's happy she's grown up to look like him. But Furiosa replies that she doesn't look like him at all. He insists the opposite, saying she's a carbon copy of him. Eventually, Furiosa kills him, and it's said she either burned him, killed him the same way he did Jack, or put him on a tree like he did with her mom. But the closest version of the truth is that Furiosa left Dementus alive in the city of Citadel and planted a tree over his body, and he lived like that until he died. Furiosa then took Joe's wives and put them in a big truck, because no one wants to live with him. On the flip side, we meet a cop named Max. Max was living alone in the desert because he didn't want to deal with people and hadamedjawain to K. He faced all those who stood in his way alone. One day, while driving his car, he noticed that Joe's gang was after him. Max tried to get away from them, but there were too many, and they managed to flip his car. Max got out of the car, and Joe's gang caught him, tied him up, shaved his head, and tattooed their gang symbol on him. This tattoo was proof that Max had become property of Joe's gang, and they took him so they could take his blood for Joe. Then we see Joe to go. The gang leader and the boss of Citadel City is out talking to people, saying he's putting together a team to go get fuel from Gas City and ammo from Bullet Farm, and Empress Furiosa will lead the crew. And these are my guys, who will go with Furiosa on this mission. Joe had a ton of water stored in the castle and cut it off from the people, but now he's opening the water tanks for everyone to rush in and fill up as much as they can before he shuts it off again. We see people fighting and hitting each other for water. Then Furiosa's team set off to Gas and Ammo City. But suddenly Furiosa veers off the road and heads down a different path without telling anyone. The team members followed her, not knowing where they were going. When one of the team members asks, "Where are we going?" she just keeps walking and doesn't answer. She just said, "Follow me." At a Citadel City, someone spots her through a telescope and realizes she's gone off course to meet another gang and reports this to Joe, even though she has issues with that gang. Joe starts to suspect something's off and goes looking for his wives but can't find them. He figures out that Furiosa took them with her. Joe gets mad and tells his guys to go get his wives back. There was a guy named Nux, and Nax was using Max as a blood bag for Joe. Nux was injured but decided to join the chase because he was one of the most loyal guys around. All the crew took off, and Nux tied Max up and put him at the front of his car with a tube running to transfer Max's blood. Joe was with them, to leading the gang. Joe's gang was firing flares into the sky, they calling for help from the leader of the Gas and Ammo City. The team with Furiosa saw the smoke in the sky and asked Furiosa what was going on, but Furiosa wouldn't spill any details. Meanwhile, on the other side, in the desert, a gang called Buzzard spotted the Furiosa team and decided to take them out. They really started closing in, and when the Furiosa team saw them, they asked Furiosa, "What are we gonna do?" Furiosa replied, "We need to speed up and get away from them and be ready with our weapons." But one of the Furiosa cars got caught in a trap, and the Buzzard's gang attacked the rest of the Furiosa crew on their motorcycles, trying to slash the tires of the Furiosa car. However, the Furiosa guys hit that car with several spears and destroyed it. Then Furiosa joined her team and they destroyed the second car, and the Furiosa team felt a bit safer. But Team Joe got really close to them, and other Buzzard's gang cars showed up, leading to a big showdown between the two gangs, but Joe's team was able to confront them and get rid of them. Nux managed to drive his car to Furiosa, but found himself caught in a sandstorm. One of Furiosa's guys realized they were betraying Joe, so he confronted Furiosa, but she knocked him off the car. Nux was super close and wanted to take a shot at Furiosa, but Furiosa pushed him away with the truck. Nux's tires blew up, and he ordered one of his guys to free Max and tie him to the back of the car. But as soon as Max was free, he managed to take down that guy and was about to jump into Nux's car, but Nux had already locked all the windows. At that point, they drove into the sandstorm, and Max held onto the car with all his strength, and Furiosa gets rid of the car that was next to her. Nux was in the car, watching his friends get picked off one by one, while Furiosa was headed in another direction. But Nux had a clear view and was thinking about sacrificing himself to take down Furiosa. He was filling his car with gas, and Max noticed what he was up to, trying to stop this crazy guy by smashing the car windows. While they were fighting, Furiosa rammed into them with the truck, completely wrecking the car. After that, Max woke up and found himself okay, with the hose that was draining his blood still attached. But he was still chained to Nux. Max managed to pull Nux's body out, and he tried to shoot Nux's hand to free himself, but the gun was jammed and wouldn't fire. Max spotted the Furiosa truck from a distance, so he grabbed Nux and headed over there. He saw Furiosa and Joe's 5 wives, and they had a water hose with them. Max pulled out his gun and asked for a drink of water. One of them stepped forward and handed him the hose, and Max took a sip. Water splashed on Nux, and he started to wake up. Max asked them to untie him. Joe's wife was doing it, while Furiosa attacked Max and tried to shoot him. But the gun was jammed again, and Joe's wives were helping her. Furiosa tried to grab a gun from the truck, but Nux woke up and jumped at her. Max seized the chance and took the gun, but Furiosa showed up behind him and tried to make him shoot himself. Meanwhile, Joe's wives were holding on to Nux. Max ended up fighting Furiosa again, and finally managed to overpower her and bring her down. They saw Joe's gang approaching them, and Nux was pretty happy, telling Max that Joe would give them a big reward for catching them alive. But it seemed like Max didn't care about that. Nux moved and cut the chain, and as soon as Max was free, he beat up Nux and then jumped in the truck by himself and took off fast before Joe and his guys got there. But the truck had a special code that only Furiosa knew, and suddenly the truck froze and wouldn't move. Furiosa asked him to let her drive so they could all escape, and Max had no choice but to agree. So he let Furiosa take the wheel while Joe's wives got in, and Max was keeping an eye on them carefully. And Furiosa was heading to the Green Valley. The Green Valley is a good place to live and farm, and only women live there. When they started moving, Nux sneaked in and got into the truck with them and hid, waiting for the right moment to attack. Suddenly, the car slowed down, and Max went and found that the problem was with the tires. He managed to fix the problem. Nux managed to sneak into the front of the truck and attack Furiosa, but Joe's wives managed to throw him out of the car. Furiosa was heading to a place called the Wastelands, and told Max she made a deal with the Rock Riders gang here to smuggle them through in exchange for giving them a fuel tank. But since Joe's gang is pushing us out, you should go hide and watch out for any betrayal that might happen to us. And she tells him the truck code, and Furiosa reaches the Wastelands, gets off the truck, and loudly tells the gang, "I'm leaving the fuel tank in the desert," and she asked the gang to throw stones behind them after they pass to block the road. And Rock Riders gang appears on motorcycles, but Furiosa spots the Joe's gang approaching, so she realizes she won't finish negotiating in time, tells Max to start driving the truck fast, trying to escape the gunfire. The Rock Riders gang blows up the rocks to block the way so the Joe's gang can't enter their territory. Then they go after a Furiosa on their bikes to steal its fuel, all worked up because the Furiosa brought the Joe's gang to their turf. They toss a bomb at the front of the truck while Joe hops into this big vehicle to get past the rocks, taking the best men with him. Nux reached them, and he tells Joe that he was with Furiosa in the truck. Joe has Nux hop in with him and gives his guys the order to start blasting those rocks when he gets to the other side and to come after him. Suddenly, Joe's giant car zooms past, and on the other side, the Rock Riders gang jumps onto Furiosa car and starts throwing bombs at it, fire flaring up at the front. But Furiosa had a plan. She lowered the truck's bed to dump a bunch of sand on the car to put out the flames. At the same time, Furiosa and Max started shooting at the gang, and Furiosa managed to take out a few of them. But this gang doesn't give up. One guy is sitting there lighting a stick of dynamite to throw it into the driver's cabin, but Furiosa shot a flare right in that guy's face, and he fell under the truck and died. The dynamite exploded in the last truck, that had the fuel tank. After they took down the Rock Riders gang, Joe showed up, drawing his weapon to shoot at Furiosa. But Joe's wives opened the door to defend Furiosa. Furiosa took advantage of the moment and killed one of Joe's men. Joe handed a gun to Nux so he can sneaked over to the truck to kill Furiosa. He was carrying out the order, but the chain in his hand got stuck, and he almost fell. Joe gave up hope on him and just kept driving quickly. He jumped off a rock and stayed in the lead. One of Joe's sons, named Rictus, threw a spear at Max's car and snagged Max, who was stuck. He was in pain, but Joe's wife, named Angarad, got out of the car to cut that chain, and Furiosa fixed the car's steering wheel. But suddenly, a rock appeared in front of them, and they crashed into it. Joe's favorite wife, Angarad, was on the verge of death, but she came out alive. When she tried to get back into the car, her feet slipped and got caught in the door, and she couldn't get in. The door came off, and she fell. Joe nearly ran over her, but turned away just in time, and his car flipped. Joe's wives thought Angarad was still alive and asked Max to turn back to save her. But he doesn't agree, saying she was gone and Furiosa had to keep going to the Green Valley. Joe was holding his favorite wife's body and crying because she was pregnant. A few of Joe's guys on motorcycles showed up, and Joe decided to move on. Furiosa's car was smoking from the heat, so they stopped to fix the engine. By chance, she saw Joe's guys on the motorcycle and killed them. After that, they continued on their way, and one of Joe's wives went to the back of the car to keep an eye on the situation. But she found Nux there, and he was upset and sad. She asked Nux what was wrong, and he told her, "Joe will never forgive me because I let him down. I tried to help him, but I wasn't lucky." She's trying to calm him down, sitting next to him and chatting, and keeps telling him that she will not tell anyone that he is here with them in the truck. Max keeps driving until night falls, and then the truck gets stuck in the mud. Turns out they've arrived at the muddy swamps. So Max and his crew decide to take advantage of the situation, rushing to place some bombs in the mud to blow up Joe's convoy. They change a tire and get moving again. One of Joe's trucks blows up from the bombs, and the rest of the convoy gets held up because of the mud. The Ammo City leader is with them and is frustrated that they haven't run into any battle yet. He decided to go with his men, and they were handling it on their own because his car isn't stuck in the mud because it was built on a tank chassis. Meanwhile, Max's car was getting stuck again. They needed to find a way out before their enemies arrived. And sure enough, the commander of the Ammo City was getting closer. Max decided to take a shot at him and fired 2 rounds, but he missed. Then, Furiosa fired the last shot and it hit the commander's car headlight perfectly, blinding him. Nux wanted to help Furiosa and Max, so he came out of hiding and said, "I've got an idea to get the truck moving. Let's tie the truck to that tree because it'll help pull it out from the mud." At the same time, the Ammo City leader decided to shoot them madly. He didn't care if Joe's wives got killed, and Joe's wives were running away in fear, while Nux was trying to drive the car after tying it in a tree. His plan worked, and he managed to get the car out of the mud with the help of the tree. But then they faced another problem. The engine temperature shot up, so Max decided to stop and make a turn towards the Ammo City leader, while the rest of the team cooled down the engine. Max moved forward alone. Then Furiosa saw explosions in the dark and had no idea if Max was alive or dead. She aimed at the figure coming from the darkness, but it turned out to be Max, who managed to take out the Ammo City leader and his guys. And he brought with him the steering wheel and supplies that were with the Ammo City leader, and then they drove off, making their way through the muddy swamps, passing through that abandoned area filled with strange creatures and dead trees. The next morning, they arrived at the Green Valley, but the only thing they found was a woman standing on a tower asking for help. Max was suspicious that this could be a trap. Then Furiosa stepped out and shouted, "I lived in the Green Valley when I was little, and I was kidnapped with my mom a long time ago." When the woman on the tower heard that, she called for her friends, and all of them inside turned out to be women who recognized Furiosa. Furiosa was telling them what happened to her and her mother when she was little, and she kept telling them she traveled all that way to come back and live in the Green Valley. But the women told her she actually passed through the Green Valley on her way here, and they discovered that the Green Valley is actually that swamp they had stumbled into, and it's not livable anymore, as shown by the dead trees they saw. Furiosa is surprised by what she heard, and she spends all day thinking of a solution. And in the end, she suggested that they head east to find a place with good soil to settle down and live. But they'll leave the truck here, and they would take the motorcycles. She tells Max to come with them if he wants, but Max declines and tells her, "I'm gonna head out on my own." So, Furiosa decided to leave him. Furiosa and all the women take off on the motorcycles, while Max watches them from a distance until they left. Suddenly, Max gets a wild idea and decides to follow them. He catches up and stops them. Max tells them they should turn back from the desert road because it's super dangerous and there's no sign they'll find anything. So the best plan is to head back to Citadel City. Max's plan is for them to retrace their steps, lure Joe and his crew into the muddy swamps, take them on and wipe them out, then claim Citadel City for themselves. And even though it's a really risky plan, everyone loved the idea and agreed, so they all headed back to the truck. We back to Joe and his crew after they got out of the muddy swamps. They were just standing around, exhausted from the chase. Joe saw Furiosa truck moving towards Citadel City. His guys started to move and chase it, and one of Joe's cars was racing ahead of everyone and reached the truck first. There was a shootout, and one of Joe's soldiers put gasoline in the car's vents because it would increase the car's speed. And Nux, he did the same move with the truck. It was risky for the car's engine, but the Furiosa wasn't about to let Joe's guys overtake it. In the end, the women with her managed to kill the driver of the car next to them. And right now, the first engine of Furiosa car has broken down, and the second engine is about to blow up. Furiosa's car is slowing down, and Max is trying to fix the first engine. He's going to try to take off the fuel tank, but at the same time, Joe's soldiers are getting really close and throwing spears at the back of the truck, which is super scary. So Max is risking his life trying to get rid of those spears. Joe's cars are getting closer, and when the women see them ahead, they start shooting. Meanwhile, Max has finished with all the spears and was heading back to his seat, but Joe's soldiers are closing in on him, hanging on to the poles. They jumps onto the truck and Max is fighting they off, while another soldier throws a smoke grenade into the driver's cabin and wraps a rope around Furiosa's neck. A woman jumps in and hits that soldier, saving Furiosa, but she doesn't notice the guy behind her who killed her with a chainsaw. Furiosa manages to get rid of the smoke grenade and kill anyone who gets close to the driver's cabin. Max is still alive and fighting Joe's soldiers, but then he gets hit by an arrow in the hand, falls down, and passes out. There were a lot of Joe's men, and one of them grabbed one of Joe's wives, and no one could do anything about it. Max comes to and gets back into the fight, and there's a guy ready to finish him off with a chainsaw. Max was going to fall, and Furiosa pulled him at the last moment, while another soldier sneaked into the truck and stabbed Furiosa. She was resisting, holding Max with her hands. Joe's wives got rid of that soldier, and Nux was working on fixing the first engine. Then he saw Max jump onto the car next to him. Max started getting into it with the guys in the car, tossed a soldier out, and kicked the Gas City commander. Then he passed out. Max took over their truck, and Joe wanted to kill Max, but Max used the Gas City commander as a shield and took the bullets instead of Max. Joe's wives told Max that Furiosa is seriously injured, and Max jumps out of the truck just as it explodes in Joe's convoy. Before he can reach Furiosa's truck, a soldier grabs him and tries to throw him onto the road, but Max somehow manages to shake him off. Max jumps into another one of Joe's cars, and Joe's car moves ahead of the Furiosa truck. Joe is trying to stop her truck, so Furiosa lets Nux take the wheel and heads towards Joe's car. Joe's son, Rictus, was about to kill her, but Max shows up and knocks Rictus on the head. Rictus pushes Max away, while Furiosa keeps engaged to another soldier, and Rictus continues to fight Max. One of the women distracts Rictus, and Max seizes the chance to hit him on the head with a tube, knocking him out. Nux crashes into Joe's car from behind, and the soldier that was fighting with Furiosa falls, and Furiosa comes in through the window, ties Joe's mask to one of the car's wheels. He loses his mask. Joe is freaking out because he can't live without the mask. So a big part of Furiosa and Max's plan works out. Joe's wives head to the truck to join Max and Furiosa. But at that moment, Rictus wakes up and grabs Furiosa's truck engine to throw it at Joe's car. But Nux sacrifices himself to save them, flipping the truck over and blocking the road on the other mission. The rest of Joe's crew. And even though the mission was a success, not everything was great because Furiosa was in bad shape and was dying from blood loss. So Max decided to give her a blood transfusion. After a bit, they arrived in Citadel City, and Max showed the guards Joe's body, which made everyone celebrate since they finally got rid of the tyrant. They opened up the water for the people to use as they wanted, and Furiosa was appointed the new wise leader. Max walked through the crowd and left the city to continue his journey and adventures. And that's the end of the Mad Max movie saga. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to help us get this episode 8,000 likes. And that's all. Bye. Bye!